Hello again, and welcome to day number 49. My name is Mary, and the title today of our story is The Tabernacle, Part 1. God was very good to the Israelites after they had forsaken him to take them again as his own people, and he gave them a plan that would allow them to have something they could see to remind them of their God. At the same time, his plan would not lead them to worship an image, but would teach them a higher truth, that the true God cannot be seen by eyes of men. The plan was this: to have in the middle of the camp a house called the house of God, which the people could see and to which they could come for worship. Every time an Israelite looked at this house, he might say to himself and reach his children, "That is the house where God lives among his people," even though no image stood in the house. Since the Israelites were living in tents and often moved from place to place, this house of God would need to be something like a tent, so it could be taken down and moved as often as the camp was changed. This tent was called a tabernacle. The tabernacle was the tent where God lived among his people and where the people could meet God. We know God is a spirit and has no body like ours, and that he is everywhere. Yet it was right to say God lived in the tabernacle of the Israelites, because God showed his presence there in a special way by putting a pillar or cloud over it all day and a pillar of fire all night. The Israelites believed that in one room of this tabernacle, the glory and brightness of God's presence could be seen. This tabernacle stood exactly in the middle of the camp, in the wilderness. In front of it, and a little distance from it, stood the tent where Moses lived. Around the tabernacle, there was what we might call an open square. Though it was not exactly square, for it was about 150 feet long by 75 feet wide. Around it was a curtain of fine linen in bright colors hanging on posts of brass. The posts were held in place by cords fastened to the ground with tent pins or spikes. This open square was called the court of the tabernacle. The curtain around it was between 7 and 8 feet high, a little higher than a man's head. In the middle, it could be opened for the priests to enter into the court. But no one except the priests and their helpers was ever allowed to enter. Inside this court, near the entrance, stood the great altar. Since a stone or earth altar could not be carried from place to place, God told the Israelites to make an altar out of wood and brass or copper. It was like a box without a bottom or top, made of thin boards so it would not be too heavy, and then covered on the inside and outside with plates of brass or copper, so it would not catch fire and burn. Inside, a few inches below the top, was a metal grating on which the fire was built. The ashes would fall through the grating to the ground inside. This altar had 4 rings on the corners through which long poles were placed, so the priests could carry it on their shoulders when the camp was moved. The altar was a little less than 5 feet high and a little more than 7 feet wide on each side. This was the great altar, sometimes called the altar of burnt offering, because a sacrifice was burnt on it every morning and evening. Near the altar in the court of the tabernacle stood the laver. This was a large tank or basin holding water that was used in washing the offerings. And that was the word of the Lord. Now we come to discussion questions. Number 1. Why did God want the Israelites to have a place to worship? Number 2. What did they call this place of worship? Number 3. How did God show he was there? Number 4. What did the tabernacle look like? And that was the end of the questions as well. Thank you again for another good day together. We'll talk to you soon with another story. God bless you all. Bye bye.